Every day at the moment, 6 people don't make it. Almost 3,000 have drowned this year. But the total arrival figures are just astounding. Now some 500,000 and more, as we know, are coming. What's hardest to relate to is why you would risk your life, the life also of your children. What would push you to do this? The relief that you see on their faces is just astonishing when they arrive. Some are in shock, they're dehydrated, exhausted, and this, remember, is the beginning, not the end of their journey through Europe.
So that's the latest 40 people or so arriving here, but thousands more have arrived on these beaches in the last few weeks, and they're now part of an elaborate smuggling system. The boats and the life jackets being provided on the Turkish side, and those boats being salvaged this end, and some of the engines being sent back to Turkey. 7 out of every 10 people now coming to Europe by sea this year have made this journey to the Greek islands from just over there, just across the way.
In recent years, Greece has faced a significant influx of migrants attempting to cross its borders, primarily from countries in the Middle East and Asia, seeking refuge in Europe. The scale of this migration wave has posed substantial challenges to Greece's infrastructure, economy and social fabric. However, through a combination of stringent border controls, international cooperation and domestic policy adjustments, Greece has made substantial strides in mitigating the immigration crisis that once overwhelmed its borders.
It's been a year since a boat tragedy off Greece's coast killed hundreds of migrants from several countries. But there are several questions what remain unanswered regarding the role of the Coast Guard and the accountability of what was one of the deadliest recorded boat disaster in the Mediterranean. Here's a report.
When a fishing trawler capsized off Greece a year ago, killing hundreds of migrants, Egyptian electrician Mahmoud Chalabi was the only person from his hometown to survive. 16 friends from his neighbourhood outside Cairo were never found. A year on, no independent investigation has been completed into the Coast Guard's role, and no one has been held accountable. The Egyptian's relatives call him daily for news he can't give them, says Chalabi, who is seeking asylum in Athens.
No one is accepting that they might be dead because they still haven't heard any news about them or know anything about them. Some people call their son's phone and it rings. Their thinking is, how is it that his phone is in the sea, and how is it that the phone rings and people answer? There are people answering the phones and in a foreign language, not Arabic.
The disaster on June 14th off southwestern Greece sent shockwaves across Europe and beyond. Around 700 people were estimated to be on board. 104 survived and 82 corpses were recovered. The rest are missing. Survivors say the authorities caused the boat to capsize when they tried to tow it. But authorities say the boat refused assistance. Greece's Coast Guard was monitoring the migrant ship, and though the ship sent out distress signals, took many hours to respond. It was one of the worst recorded boat disasters in the Mediterranean, and it raised questions about the European Union's tactics to stem the flow of migrants from Africa and the Middle East. Eleni Spathana, a lawyer representing dozens of survivors, called the sinking a crime that resulted from increasingly tough deterrent measures.
One year after the tragic Pylos shipwreck, the basic questions regarding the criminal omissions and actions of the Greek authorities and the Greek Coast Guard remain unanswered. Serious omissions and actions referring to the violation of all the regulations of international law and the national law regarding rescue at sea.
Και εθνικού δικαίου ως προς την διάσωση στη θάλασσα. Greek authorities for months blamed 9 Egyptians on board, but they were released last month when a Greek court dismissed the case. The focus of investigations is now likely to fall on the Coast Guard, legal experts said. The Coast Guard declined to comment. Chalabi says the relatives need answers.
The immigration crisis in Greece can be traced back to the early 2010s, exacerbated by conflicts in Syria, Afghanistan and Iraq, which displaced millions of people. Greece, with its strategic geographic location as a gateway to Europe from Asia and the Middle East, became a primary entry point for migrants seeking asylum and better economic opportunities. The influx of migrants placed immense pressure on Greece's resources, overwhelmed its asylum system, and strained relations with neighbouring countries, particularly Turkey.
In Egypt, it is time to remember the 2023 tragic boat accident that claimed the lives of 85 people. The sinking of the Adriana a year ago on Friday in international waters 75 kilometers off Pylos in southern Greece was one of the worst. Ali Elwans is one of the survivors to this sad incident. He is one of the just 104 survivors from the wreck of a dilapidated old metal fishing boat smuggling up to 750 migrants from North Africa to Europe.
I remember every second happened with me until now. I can't forget anything because me lost some friend in this ship. He's best friend for me. Me lost him. I can't forget anything happened until now.
Thousands have died in Mediterranean Sea shipwrecks in recent years as migrants from the Middle East, Asia and Africa seek a better life in the affluent European Union. Survivors like Ali are pushed by the hard economic times that has impacted many families looking for ways to survive.
Until now, me work anything. If someone here told me come to move this rubbish, I will go for him to move. No problem for this because me leave my country from money. For it's not easy.
Authorities in many countries blame smugglers who cram hundreds of people into unseaworthy vessels, most in an airless hold designed to store a catch of fish.
Initially caught off guard, Greece struggled to cope with the sheer volume of migrants arriving by sea and land. The government faced criticism from international human rights organisations for its handling of migrant arrivals, with allegations of inadequate reception conditions and violations of asylum seekers' rights. The situation reached a critical point in 2015 when a surge in arrivals prompted Greece to declare a state of emergency in border regions and appeal to the European Union for assistance.
First up, though, let's talk about elections. No, not the one going on here in the UK ahead of July the 4th. Polling day has already arrived in Europe. Today and Friday, Saturday and Sunday, the whole of the European Union are going to the polls. We'll get the results of all those elections after polls close on the last day on Sunday at around 10 p.m. We're going to find out what the Europeans have decided and what they want in terms of who to elect to the European Parliament as MEPs. But what is very much looking interesting and very different from where we are here in the UK right now is that the polls suggest it is parties on the right who are benefiting rather than, as we're seeing here in the UK, a party on the left. Well, let's talk about this with Stephen Wolfe. He's a former MEP himself on the Brexit Party and also a migration expert. A good afternoon to you, Stephen.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Thanks so much for joining us. It is fascinating, isn't it, that a lot of the issues in our own election here are also massive big issues in Europe and are massively coming to the fore for these European elections. And the thing you've been talking to us about for so many years now is the number one issue for a lot of people: immigration, immigration, immigration.
Well, certainly immigration is now the top of the agenda in almost all the European countries polling. And the reason for that is very simple. Last year, there was nearly around 3 million immigrants that had come into the European Union. About 1 million of those were illegal. And of course, every country is now being expected, due to a Commission proposal, to either accept a certain number of immigrants at a cost of around 60,000 euros each, or have to pay the European Commission £60,000 so that they can give it to the countries that take it. Yeah. And as a consequence of that, this is going to be a really exciting time. In a way, you could almost say, I wish I was there so you could see the Euro anti-EU populists begin to succeed. And it's estimated, Julia, that about 9 countries will see anti-European populists come first. Austria, Belgium, the Czech Republic, France, Hungary, Italy, Netherlands, Poland and Slovakia. But come second in a further 9, including countries such as Spain and Portugal, where you'd never expect it.
Yeah, I mean, it is absolutely fascinating. I mean, France has been the crucial one there. Emmanuel Macron is looking like he's not going to have a majority, to deal with in the National Assembly either. I mean, this is the thing. We have seen this shift to the right. But it's very interesting that there's been the shift to the right in Europe on this issue, facing exactly the same issues that we've got here in the UK. And yet we have seen this massive shift to the left, it would appear. I mean, such as a lot of people probably shouting at the radio right now saying, left, right, you know, we've kind of, all the parties seem to be on, the main parties seem to be on the left now anyway on this issue. But why do you think it's so different in Europe? Is it because of the voting system? So if you want something different, you can vote for a party that will still get seats in the European Parliament, even though...
As a member state of the European Union, EU, Greece looked to the EU for support in managing the immigration crisis. The EU's response included financial aid, deployment of Frontex, the European Border and Coast Guard Agency, personnel to assist in border management, and the implementation of relocation programs to distribute asylum seekers more evenly across EU member states. Despite these efforts, Greece continued to bear the brunt of migrant arrivals due to its geographical proximity to Turkey and the Mediterranean migration route.
They can only get 5-6 percentage points in the polls, whereas in the UK with first past the post, then people say, well, it's kind of, a lot of people say it's a toss-up between the only two big parties in town.
I believe it's exactly that now. And then there's another aspect about it in terms of the population who are voting. In Europe, much more of the younger people, those below the age of 30, are beginning to support parties like Geert Wilders in the Netherlands or Marie Le Pen in France. And certainly they are mass of the voters supporting Fidesz in Hungary.
But wait a minute, these are the people, these are the candidates, the parties which are vilified in the mainstream media. Certainly here, I imagine also a lot in European newspapers and media as well, as, you know, far-right extremist. And we're constantly told that, you know, we're horrible bigots because we voted for Brexit here, but aren't the Europeans nice and civilised? But they are garnering huge levels of support.
They are garnering huge levels of support. And the question is, what is actually being far right? Far right seems to be either you believe in the nation state controlling your borders and having a sensible immigration policy that doesn't allow people traffickers to take control of your immigration policy, or those in the European Union. And that's why they can vote en masse through, as you said, through proportional representation. And I believe that's what's holding them back here in the UK. If you hear what is the mantra of the Conservative Party, not that we have a positive message going forward, but don't vote for Nigel Farage or Reform because you'll let Labour in.
Yeah.
That's because we have first past the post. But if you had proportional representation, that argument disappears. And therefore...
See, this is where, I mean, I completely understand those arguments and I want people's votes to feel that their votes count no matter what. There is also the issue when you have a PR system, you end up with a system where the parties get to decide the list of candidates. You don't have that direct link with the constituency. There are downsides to that, but you give more control to the party bureaucracies.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm not saying that this is the perfect scenario, but the question is, why are people voting more and more for parties that are seen as anti-European or those regarded by the left as being far right? I would say those who are being more populist and listening to the people is perhaps a better description. But that is because they have the opportunity through the voting system. It does give greater power then to the leaders of those parties. Without a doubt, Geert Wilders, Marie Le Pen are in charge of those parties because they can shift their candidates around as much as they want. So you don't get that much dissent. And when it does, then the whole thing collapses.
Yeah. It's going to be fascinating to watch. So in terms of whether anything changes as a result of these votes, we've seen the impact of European elections, UKIP, Brexit Party here in the UK. I mean, basically forcing I guess to get a referendum on the EU, which we voted to leave, and then actually forcing out Theresa May, that power.
Recognising the need for robust border security, Greece embarked on an ambitious plan to fortify its borders with Turkey. This included the construction of physical barriers such as fences topped with barbed wire, installation of surveillance technology, and the deployment of additional border patrol personnel. The aim was to create a deterrent against illegal crossings and human trafficking while ensuring compliance with international humanitarian law. The effectiveness of these measures was evident in the significant reduction in illegal border crossings and migrant arrivals. Greece's border security efforts received mixed reactions internationally, with praise for reducing illegal migration flows and criticism for alleged human rights violations in the enforcement of border controls.
We no longer have that through European elections, but What impact will it actually have on the existing governments of Europe?
I think it's going to have a massive impact actually this time round, particularly if, as the estimates see, those of the central conservatives, the ECR, that's like our own Conservative Party, which will contract but still be the largest party, joining those right-wing parties of Fidesz and Geert Wilders. And it will have policy implications in probably three areas. Without a doubt, immigration.
Yep.
Because immigration is coming back to the Commission, and normally the European Parliament works as a coalition of parties that agree the language. This time, I think a lot more restrictive elements will come into it. A second area, Julie, which I think is going to be very important for us to be listening to, is the fact that the Greens will lose votes at this election, and the parties that have been opposing the kind of green agenda, the growth of this green agenda, are going to also be in control. And they're going to change that too. Not much on foreign policy, I think, either. But also the final one will be on this idea of liberty. You know, over the past few years, the Commission has been attacking Hungary, attacking Poland, and trying to put fines on them. I don't think they'll be able to get away with that kind of civil liberties policy area this time around. So three key areas could have control by those who are not part of the establishment.
It's going to be absolutely fascinating. Can I just ask you just one final question about the elections here in the UK? A latest poll from YouGov showing that since Nigel Farage has gone back to the sort of the fray, saying he's standing as an MP in Clacton, that and back as leader of Reform UK, YouGov have put the Reform UK party just 2 percentage points behind the Tories. Tories on 19%, which is unbelievably low on this poll. 17 percentage points for Reform. Labour, of course, way ahead. Lib Dems are further behind as well. What do you make of that? Do you think that things could change a lot more before election day?
I'm not surprised at these numbers. These are the sort of numbers that have been hovering around since 2015 when UKIP got 3.5 million votes, but no seats at that particular election, unless you look at Clacton, which is particularly the one that Nigel's going for. I think the importance here is do those numbers start to put in play probably 3 seats for Nigel Farage, himself, Lee Anderson, and possibly.
Don't mention any more candidates. I have to read out candidate seats, so I won't. Candidates, so I've stopped you there. I will have to stop you there. Thank you very much indeed, Stephen Wolfe, former MEP and migration expert. Thank you for that.
Despite its efforts to manage migration flows, Greece faced ongoing challenges in providing humanitarian assistance to asylum seekers and refugees within its borders. Overcrowded reception centres, inadequate medical care and substandard living conditions drew condemnation from human rights organisations and the international community. Allegations of pushbacks and mistreatment of migrants by Greek authorities further fuelled controversy and raised ethical concerns about Europe's approach to managing migration. In parallel with its border security measures, Greece sought to strengthen its legal and policy framework for asylum and immigration. Reforms aimed at expediting asylum procedures, enhancing reception conditions, and improving integration opportunities for recognised refugees were introduced. These reforms were essential in addressing systemic deficiencies and ensuring compliance with international legal standards while balancing national security concerns.
Migrants escaping war, persecution or poverty have used a number of routes to reach Europe. Some travel from North Africa to Italy. Others cross from Turkey to the nearby Greek islands. For many, Greece is seen as the best way into Europe. Last year, just over 41,000 people arrived using that route. Human rights groups say thousands of people seeking asylum have been forced back illegally from Greece to Turkey, denied the right to seek asylum, something enshrined in international and EU law. Tonight's documentary looks into the role of the Greek Coast Guard in trying to stem the flow, and it raises some serious questions. For years, the Greek authorities have been accused of taking a sometimes uncompromising attitude towards asylum seekers attempting to reach the islands. The BBC has documented some of these episodes and heard stories of other practices which appear to breach international law. And now video of one such episode. On the island of Lesbos, a group of migrants, including women and children, are taken back to the shore and escorted by masked men to a waiting Coast Guard ship. The boat heads out to sea, out of Greek waters. The migrants are put into a tiny life raft and set adrift, found later by the Turkish authorities. Greece says it's investigating.
It doesn't seem like it's forceful.
The footage is shown to the former head of the Coast Guard Special Operations. He says he sees nothing wrong with the video. But during a break, he takes a different line.
Δεν ξέρω γιατί το κάνανε για μέρα μεσημέρι όλος. Δεν ξέρω ότι... Ξεκάθαρα παράνομο, προφανώς. Προφανώς παράνομο. Διεθνές έγκλημα, διεθνές αδίκημα.
The documentary contains other shocking allegations. Ibrahim says he was shot at after coming ashore on the island of Samos, taken back out to sea with two companions and thrown overboard. The two others drowned.
Ils ont porté le Camerounais et quand je lève la tête, je vois ils ont balancé le Camerounais dans l'eau. Et l'Ivoirien disait sauvez-moi, sauvez-moi, je ne veux pas mourir.
The Greek Coast Guard says that it strongly rejects all accusations of illegal activities and works tirelessly and with the utmost professionalism and a strong sense of responsibility and respect for human life and fundamental rights, adding that they were in full compliance with the country's international obligations. For 9 years, Greece has been on the front line of an issue that resonates right across Europe. In this year of elections, stopping the boats remains as politically charged as it was when the refugee and migrant crisis erupted almost a decade ago.
Greece's management of the immigration crisis also underscored the importance of international cooperation and diplomatic engagement. Bilateral agreements with neighbouring countries, particularly Turkey, played a crucial role in managing migrant flows and addressing security challenges along shared borders. The EU's role as a mediator and facilitator of dialogue between Greece and Turkey contributed to regional stability and enhanced border management capabilities. The influx of migrants had profound socio-economic implications for Greece, affecting labour markets, public services and social cohesion. Despite initial challenges, Greece recognised the potential contributions of migrants to its economy and society. Efforts to promote migrant integration through language courses, vocational training and employment initiatives aimed to foster social inclusion and mitigate tensions between host communities and newcomers. Public opinion in Greece regarding immigration policy was divided, reflecting broader debates on national identity, security concerns and humanitarian values. While some advocated for stricter border controls and reduced migrant intake, others called for compassion, solidarity and adherence to international refugee rights standards. Political parties also adopted varying positions on immigration, influencing policy discourse and legislative reforms. Greece's experience in managing the immigration crisis highlighted several challenges and lessons learned for future policy development. Key challenges included the need for sustainable funding mechanisms, capacity building in asylum procedures, and addressing root cause of migration through international cooperation and development aid. Lessons learned emphasised the importance of a coordinated and comprehensive approach to migration management, balancing humanitarian principles with national security imperatives. So Greece's response to the immigration crisis shocked many observers by demonstrating resilience, innovation and determination in managing one of Europe's most pressing challenges. Through a combination of stringent border controls, legal reforms, international cooperation and socio-economic integration efforts, Greece navigated complex geopolitical dynamics while upholding its obligations under international law. While significant progress has been made, the long-term sustainability of Greece's immigration policy hinges on continued collaboration with EU partners, adherence to human rights principles and proactive measures to address emerging migration trends. Looking ahead, Greece faces ongoing challenges in maintaining effective border management, enhancing asylum procedures and promoting inclusive migrant integration. The evolving geopolitical landscape, shifts in migration patterns and global economic uncertainties will require adaptive strategies and proactive diplomacy. By learning from past experiences and building on achievements, Greece can continue to play a pivotal role in shaping European immigration policy and fostering regional stability. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. For more content like this, be sure to subscribe to the channel.